All right. Hello to any.
If you're a replayer, you can still participate. You can, of course, follow me if you're new to me. And swipe right on Apple, up on Android. I think you can share the feed as well with your followers on replay. You can also tap on the screen for hearts, especially if anything that I'm saying is resonating with you. Tap on the screen. And then if you have any questions that I wasn't able to answer, because of course if you're a replayer, but even if you're live, you can find me on Twitter and you can find me on Snapchat and feel free to ask me questions. So, what is it that I'm talking about today? Hi. For anybody that's new to me, my name is joannazarach, and I do a daily money broadcast on money habits. And it's all about developing better money habits, helping you understand how money works, and all in an attempt to get you guys to make better money decisions, but more importantly, to develop those money habits. Money habits are just the things that we do every day with our money that basically the choices that you make will determine where you end with your in your financial life. So, before I jump into my my work in progress on the estimating tool, the tax estimating tool, I want to talk a little bit about the other things that I do to try to help people with their financials. So last night I met with a family that this is like, I call them my original family. So back in August, I think, like sometime mid of last year, I was like, I really need to figure out how do I help other people manage their money. And the very first thing that I did was I saw somebody post a question in one of my Facebook groups. It was in Chicago, and I just reached out to her and I said, look, I have this intense desire to help other people with money. I make sure I don't misrepresent myself, right? I'm not a certified financial anything, but I said, look, I want to coach people and understand why they're struggling with money. And she says, yes, that would be great. So this was the third time I've met with this family and kind of got an overview of what their financials are. They make a good income, but they're still struggling. So we're, kind of working through, first just trying to understand their financial situation, right? The intake interview actually took like 3 hours, just because there's a lot of moving parts in your financial life. The second meeting, we talked about sort of getting their credit cards, like getting more insight into where they are in terms of the credit card debt. And then last night, we really talked about cash flow and the impact of taxation. And so that's that's where they're at. And what's really great is that they're really taking my advice and implementing it little by little, right? And it takes time. So that's the other thing that I realize is that it takes a lot of time for people to absorb the information about money and to get comfortable and to get disciplined. And one of the feedback so I showed them my money cash flow. I started doing their cash flow in my cash flowing spreadsheet. And if you haven't seen it, that's the pin post on my Twitter. It's a Google Doc that I shared for everybody to use. Some spreadsheets are locked down, and then some spreadsheets you can play around with or copy it. I haven't I'm not sure exactly of the technical aspect of it, like how much technical knowledge you need to have to actually operate them. But if you're curious, check them out. So I explained to them the concept of the cash flowing spreadsheets, and they were very, very responsive to it. So I'm happy about that. The other thing that I said, okay, like this impact of taxation is one of these the most it's a logical, so taxation is actually a logical flow of rules. But even as I'm working on this estimating tool this morning, and I was like, okay, I'm going to skip the gym. I'm going to go to the gym after my broadcast. I'm going to try to work on this. And and I know, I'm like, why? I'm using this spreadsheet that I made for myself, this Excel spreadsheet that doesn't work very well, right? And I'm really trying to make a spreadsheet that you can pick. You pick your filing status, you can pick your work status, whether you're W-2 or employee, and then your salary, a number of exemptions, and pick whether it's standard itemized deductions. And it should estimate, right? It's not to replace your tax tools, but I'm trying to kind of get in within 95 percentile of correctness of where you're going to end up on taxes, and just show you your tax implication or tax impact. And the reason why I find this so important, because when I'm trying to teach people And so, because convince isn't the right thing. Like, I can't convince you. Like, I need you to understand and learn of why you should take advantage of tax advantage accounts, whether it be FSA or the parking or transit things, even a health saving account, your IRA, your 401k. I need people not to just take my word for it. I need them to understand, right? And so it's like teaching practical math, or I call it money math. It's extremely important to me to come up with a tool that will reveal to people, like they'll get the aha moment. Like, here, I want you to see the impact of this on reducing your taxes, therefore putting more money in your pocket. Because I think it's one of the hardest things that I'm coming across is getting people to understand it. And so the health savings, you have the dependent care FSA. So there's also the health care FSA, but not every employer offers it. And the health savings account is actually tied to a high deductible plan. And we'll actually talk about that on Friday, because I have a strong opinion, as I do on a lot of things, on that in terms of how you mitigate your, because I do think that they're really good, but you have to have some discipline and some cushion to be able to use the high deductible health insurance plans that's coupled with an HSA. So you could only have an HSA if you are on the high deductible plan, which I find a little unfortunate, because I think it should be available to more people and not just people who are, like, a little bit more savvy with money, because it's an excellent tax vehicle, and an HSA will roll, like, you never lose value in your HSA versus an FSA that expires at the end of the year. So, like I said, we're going to cover that in my Money Matters a little bit more in depth. But HSA, you have to qualify with a high deductible plan. But if it's open to you, you should for sure take it. Next time you're doing you're selecting your health plan, it's something to really consider. And then again, you just need to have a little bit of cushion and a little bit of like, when the bills come, I'm going to pay them because it's a tax favored account, and you're collecting that money to use against those deductibles. Anyhow. But that's a really, really difficult thing that I'm finding when I try to explain it, and I try to explain how that tax advantage works. Because here's what happens when people sign up for a tax deductible plan when on a W-2, right? So this is your most typical case. You have a W-2 employee and they get a paycheck, and now you say, okay, sign up for this plan. And here's what happens, because again, we're going through it last night. And again, after 2 meetings, I have enough trust with this family when I said, you need to do this. And they were like, okay. And now they're looking at the paycheck from December and the one from January, and it's $250 less, right? That's pretty scary when you're having $250 less in your paycheck. And, just going through with them and showing, okay, here, let's look at your pay stub. Like, we're literally studying their pay stub. I think people should spend more time studying their pay stub. It's very fascinating information on there. And I said, okay, look on this part. This is like your money. And thank you for the hearts. This is your money going into your account. I'm trying to explain it like it's a savings account, right? Like, I'm trying to break it down. And here's your money, and it's accumulating, right? And you have to claim against it. Like, I know the system seems more complicated than it needs to. And then the woman, she was the mom. I call her the mom. She's like, okay. She's like, here's how I know that. They have like apps for taking a picture of your childcare receipt and sending it in. And I said, here's what's going to happen, right? So I'm explaining to them what's going to happen in terms of how they get that money back, and how they're basically getting like $50 extra each paycheck. But again, people look at their pay stub and they panic. They're like, it's less money. Like, this was a bad decision, right? That's the first thing that people look at and go, this was a bad decision because I had less money in my paycheck. And so trying to get people more comfortable, trying to make them understand how they're going to get that money, and it's actually more money for them, it's a challenge, right? Money math is a challenge. So that's why this estimator worksheet is so important for me, even though I'm finding it challenging, right? And so I'm both a money nerd, a math nerd, and a spreadsheet nerd, like, to the nth degree. And I'm finding it challenging to go, okay, I have to create this like complex flow it's because multivariable algebra, basically what it is. It's multivariable, and it's like, okay, you have to pick these things, and then you get the answer. But I'm committed to doing this. So it might take, actually, I was like, oh, I could just whip out this calculator. No, I can't whip out this calculator. Why? Because it's difficult. But I'm working on it, and I'll show you guys what's going into the guts of this. And again, I've just started. Like I'm pulling all this information. Like I've looked it up probably 10 times, and I've been putting into my PowerPoints for the broadcast, and now I'm putting into the Google spreadsheet, right? Because now I'm like, okay, I think I found my platform, which is Google Spreadsheets, and that's where I'm going to put my money math into, so that you can do your money math with me, do money math together. So that's really the goal of this. Yeah, like let's do money math together. And so, because here's what like I spend 3 hours with this family. I like leave my family here. I go to their house, and like I'm like, okay, it's gonna only be 2 hours, right? It's like 10:30 at night, and I'm like, I gotta go. And they're like, thank you so much, and like come back for taxes. Like we're gonna be doing taxes in 2 weeks, which is like, and again, it's not a way most people want to spend their free time or their time whatsoever, but their struggle is fueling my work on how important this is, right? How important it is, and how people are struggling with money. And I feel like we need to struggle less with money. The money struggle is real, and we're doing it in isolation. And I think that that's really it's like depression, it's like parenting troubles, everything else. When you're struggling and you have nowhere to have a dialogue about it, and nowhere to say like why am I struggling with this, and not anyone to kind of help you through it, then it gets very, very lonely. So anyway, let me just show you what I mean by money calculator and why this is getting complicated. Let's work this. Okay, so basically, and you might have seen this already, this is my marginal tax bracket formulas or settings. And now I have to create these tables where, I have to pick, if I have to have a single table, a married table, and a head of household table. And there is married filing separately. But that's going to be my, like, the extra, those are really the three brackets or three filing statuses. Then of course you see the Social Security and Medicare. That's going to have to go in because I'm going to be using a W-2 and a 1099 employee. And people who do combination of both, because I think that really messes them up. And every year the Social Security ceiling changes, your exemptions change. So your exemption is $4,050. I know we've talked about adjusting your W-4 form and what happens. So I wanted people to be able to do that and tell them what's going to happen numerically. The standard deductions, and again, some people have itemized deductions. So also like try to understand, for most people, like itemized deductions, there are really three major sources. And then like obviously, so this is the beginning. Like, so I'm showing you guys how the sausage is made. Like I start with a blank spreadsheet. I have an idea, and I'm like, okay, what would I need here, right? The filing status, like what's your job status, like somewhere to enter salary or exemptions, and then I want to start spitting out some of these numbers to show how it is, and then place where I can get you guys to put in like, okay, what if I did an FSA? Because I want to show you the impact of the taxes. And again, I think people get really like present-minded, where it's like, okay, if I don't have this money right now, then it's somehow lost. And to just really give people the confidence that, you know what, like that $1,250 that you're going to get in tax benefits, and it's kind of trickling in throughout the year, right? It's not like a big number that's just there. And I think that that's really... Oh. Sorry. I need to get my holder to work. And so that's where people get really hung up on it, and hung up on actually following through on what I find like really basic advice. And then the other thing that sort of comes across is some people just don't even know about some of the concepts, right? Like I know that I had a younger person, reach out to me and saying, look, I'm 21 years old and no one's talking to me about this, and I don't even know, like when you say IRA and you talk about traditional Roth, it's like, it's just like, oh, it doesn't really even make sense. So just even like the basics of education, or when an employee starts with an employer, how much where does the responsibility lie, right? Like that's the big question. If your family has been been struggling with money through generations, and that you're struggling with money, then there really isn't a source for you to easily access, mass access to that. And again, you people are like, oh, you can just Google it, right? Or but if you don't know what questions to ask, you can't find the answers. So anyway, that's my scope for today. It's a tax estimation. We talked about estimating your taxes, so I'm going to continue working on it because everything's a work in progress. But when I have the tool, I'll pull it up on my Twitter to see if people do want to use it in terms of estimating. But if people don't use it like immediately, what I'm really building is a toolkit to help families when I'm sitting down with them and saying, look, I need you to make these decisions, and I don't want you to make them because you trust me, and that's great because people do, but I want them to follow the logic of and the math and the money math, and I want them to see a bigger picture. And again, I don't need everybody else to be a math nerd, money nerd, and a spreadsheet nerd. I want them to have an aha moment when I illustrate something and say, look, this is why it makes a difference. So estimating your taxes and estimating the impact of your tax decisions. There are many decisions that are you don't think of as tax decisions, but they are. And as we know, as I talk almost every day, taxation after income is your biggest lever, especially in the U.S. And again, I sometimes realize I'm very U.S. centric because that's my experience. But I'm sure there are taxes and tax laws elsewhere. So. Thanks for everybody who joined today, and we're going to continue doing the focusing on tax estimates and really getting into and it's not just you. So what I want to do is I want that to propagate. Like if you've made a good decision on when it comes to taxes or just your finances, and someone asks you a question, even if you're not the expert, just share your experience and say, look, this is what I do, and it's really effective and it's really good. Because sometimes it's the people we surround ourselves with that make a difference, right? We know that, right? Connected, or the 5 people that you spend the most time with. So try and influence people positively in terms of don't keep the secrets to yourself, right? So I also want people to influence others positively, and I know sometimes that's how misinformation spreads as well. So but there are some things that, again, it's a factual numerical thing, then it's not really something that you have to convince people of. So thanks a lot for joining. I'll be on tomorrow, 10 a.m. Actually, I think I have a topic tomorrow. I'm going to talk about this concept that I've been thinking about. It sounds a little funny. It's called practicing poverty. And practicing poverty is just a mindset of what could you do without? Because I think people get kind of caught up in the all the things we need and all the things we deserve. And then you can kind of give you a sense of what if you had to do without? How would your life be different? I kind of compare it a little bit to camping. I don't know if you've ever gone camping in a tent, and if you've been there for 2 or 3 days, you realize how little you can do without, and you're and the level of hygiene goes way down. So it's kind of similar. But I want people to get kind of sometimes to get out of the mindset of where everything's out of control, and to say what would happen if I had to rein it, really rein it in. And we talked a little bit about it when in regards to risk as well. Because if you're at the risk, if you're 1 paycheck away from a financial disaster, then you really need to start thinking about, can I have my mindset, and what would practicing poverty look like? And again, I don't mean for people to be poor or even dismiss how hard it is to not have enough. But having lived through times in my life where there was not enough, and having lived through that, I'm very good at embracing it and saying, you know what, this is good enough, this will work, and not worrying about but it's not part of who someone of my status or someone of my income or someone with a nice house should have. So that's going to be tomorrow. And then Friday afternoon, make sure to join me for Money Matters. We're going to talk healthcare. It's one of the biggest expenditures for families, right after childcare, education, and of course your housing. So thanks for joining. We'll see you tomorrow.